Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Speech Check. I'm Sam,
And I'm Matt.
and this is episode 25.
Today, we're going to talk about Watch Dogs Legion, Among Us hacks, and stick around to the end to hear our comments on your question from last episode.
But before we talk about any of that, Matt, what have you been playing?
Well, it's been a while since we did the last episode, so I've been playing a few things. One thing has been dominating my gameplay, but I'll leave that juicy nug till last. I picked up a game called Adore on Steam, and it's pretty weird. I think I spoke about Patch Quest a couple of episodes ago,
Yes,
and
you
how
did.
it was like a roguelike sort of Pokemon-y Binding of Isaac combination where you like catch monsters and ride them around and get their abilities and stuff. I found another kind of similar experience called Adore, and you move around a randomly generated set of tiles, your standard roguelike stuff, right? And in each room you get attacked by monsters that have kind of a Pokemon-y type vibe. They're like animals but with weird attributes, essentially. And at any time you can like capture them, kind of absorb them, and then summon them and have them to fight for you. And that's the only way you can like conduct combat is by summoning animals and having them fight. And it controls a little bit like a MOBA, which is weird. Like it's all mouse controls and then Q to R for attacking with the animal that you've got summoned. But no, sorry, no, they are not. They're for summoning one specific animal that will do its one attack. So you like face the monster you want to hit. You then summon, say, a monster that has like a dashing strike. They come out, do that, and then you unsummon them to bring them back to you. So it's really weird and really interesting. Like I've not played anything quite like it. It's in early access at the minute, so it was a little rough around the edges, and some of the balance was off. Like there's one monster that has the ability to make everything around him invincible for a short time. It's like a special thing when he does enough damage, and all of the enemy monsters can do that too, as well as your summon monsters. But if you get three of them in a room, they just trade invincibility endlessly. So I was like, well, I guess I just wait and die in here because I can't really attack them at any point. But something else kind of cool, I actually commented that on the Discord for Adore, the dev Discord. I gave my feedback on how the game is, and they've changed it in the latest patch based on my feedback.
Oh, that's nice.
They like shouted me out on the Discord and were like, because of this feedback from Matt, we're changing this in this way. I was like, oh, that's cool to feel like you're involved in the development of an indie game,
Yeah, to have that element of active participation. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the devs they seem really nice and they're pretty active, like in the Discord. So that's cool. I also went back to Slay the Spire for a little bit. They released a character called the Watcher about 6 months ago. So it's new to me, but it's not new to anyone else who actually plays the game regularly. And I was having some fun with that. I really enjoyed that game. But the game that's been absorbing all my time is Warzone, which I am late to the party on. I kind of shoo-pooed it, poo-poo, shoo-shooed it away. I didn't fancy it. I was like, man, just another BR. Started playing it, and I got hella into it. Bought the battle pass, trying to get good at it. I'm pretty stock average at the minute, and trying to learn the game a little bit. I think it's inconsistent, like all BRs are for an average player. Like sometimes you just get railed immediately, and sometimes you find the right weapons, get your load out early or whatever, and actually have a decent game. But it's just hard to be consistent in that kind of game. And I think some streamers, as much as fun to watch a streamer, they kind of give you, I don't know, like false expectations of yourself when they're dropping like 20, 30 kills. A really great game for me is like 5 to 10. Like if I got
Yeah.
nearly 10 kills, I'd be like, holy crap, I'm killing it, especially in solos. Yeah, that's kind of what I've been playing. Sam, take it away.
Well, I'm going to go right off the back because we've been playing that together.
We have.
Finally. First time since Black Ops 2, right? Back in
Yeah.
2013? 2013
Ooh,
Black Ops 2, I think.
boys are back in town.
Yeah, it was fun. We technically got a win in the zombies mode, but he left like 2 seconds before.
Yeah,
Um,
bad leave.
so you can have it in spirit.
I think it counted. Like I got the card for Wyatt, the Halloween card, which I think I only got because I won.
I have also been playing a lot of that, and I echo your sentiments very closely because I think I'm pretty just okay at it. I haven't played COD in a long time, but I think what's been happening is either the skill-based matchmaking is perfect because I'm like, I think my KD is 1, and I think well, it's technically 1, but I'm like 10 kills to the negative or something like that.
Hmm.
Or I think what might be happening is that I was dropping far away from the action when I first started out because I was like, I don't want to fight anybody because I'm probably going to lose. I'm not that good. I'm playing against PC people and I'm on console and controller, so stay away from the action, and then I would get better finishes than I probably would deserve just kind of by avoiding engagements, you know?
Hmm.
And instead now, as I've been getting a bit more confidence, I've been landing in like harder places and contesting it, and then I'm getting beaten. So maybe that's my play style is changing, and I'm becoming a bit more aggressive. So maybe it's related to that.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's fun. I can see why people have been banging on about it for so long. It hasn't changed my views on BRs. I think they're too much of a crapshoot, but they are fun with your mates.
Hmm.
And it's cool to when you're popping off and you get your loadout and all the stuff goes right for you and you're giving the call outs. It is fun, and I've thoroughly enjoyed playing with you as well.
It's always a laugh.
Finally. I've also been playing Red Dead 2 again. I went back to it and got the full single player 100% done.
Nice, nice.
It pained me somewhat because I had to finish. There's like categories of challenges, and there's one called Bandit, and you have to be like a criminal and do law breaking, black hat cowboy stuff, robbing shops, stealing wagons, all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And in every game I'm in, I'm like a good guy. I'm like the good moral apex. I'm helping everybody. So that was kind of, even though they're just virtual people and their opinions literally don't exist. If they're like, yeah, you stole my horse. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry, ye old timey man. I planned to try and get the achievement you have to get attacked by and then kill 18 grizzly bears, which I'm pretty sure is like the most dangerous animal in the game. But it's just it's grindy. I could bang out if I really wanted to. I think I'm on like 13 or 14 of 18, but you have to like sleep and reload the game, and I have to be in a very specific mood to want to do that to like reset the spawns and that kind of stuff. There is a consistent spawn area from where it is.
Hmm.
Like if you go there after enough time, there'll be another one there. But I don't know. I think it's because we've started working again. I've been having legitimate fun with Warzone. It's taken my focus completely away from doing the more grindy achievement stuff. So yeah, that's what I've been doing on that. And watching wise, I rediscovered Mythbusters. It's got all the seasons on Amazon Prime Video.
Ooh.
I think I've watched the majority of them. We had them because they were on Netflix ages ago when we first got it, and we blitzed through a lot of them then. But there's just so many, and it's just like fun science, isn't it? Jamie Heine, man, I know you're more of an Adam Savage guy,
I am, yeah.
but I love the genius walrus.
Casually wearing a beret wherever he goes.
Yeah, and it's absolutely fine. It doesn't look out of place. If I wore that, it's like people throw food at me.
I don't know how you get to the stage in your life where you can wear a beret and it's okay. Like, it doesn't look strange outside of
When they
France.
like, yeah, when they like reel off the things he's done, he was like, yeah, when I was 15, I had a pet shop, and I was like, what? I've also been like a dive master, and I think they said he's got a degree in Russian literature. It's like, what?
He's had a
What kind of
mad
life?
life.
Yeah, he's done more things already in his life than I will ever do.
He also helped
Robin,
the military on less than lethal ammunition.
yeah, I've seen whenever they do any of the shooting myths, he's usually the trigger man that does the firing.
Yeah, like he designed the like gas propulsion systems and stuff like that for less than lethal rounds. This is probably pretty well known because Mythbusters is old, but the yeah, that Pepsi ad where the Pepsi can they would like shoot out of the Pepsi machine.
Oh, the 7-Up vending machine. Yeah,
That's it.
the
Yeah,
firing thing. That's like
his
his
thing.
like biggest claim to fame, yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's cool. Everybody should play Warzone and watch Mythbusters. That would be my advice.
there is no better life than that.
So that's enough about what we've been playing and watching. I could talk about Jamie Heineman for a much longer time, but Matt instead is going to tell us about the releases. Matt, what is coming out?
I am going to tell you about them. We've got 2 releases and 1 preview today. At the time of recording, this is a preview, but by release, it might have already come out. First release is Remothered Broken Porcelain, coming at us from Stormine Games, 13th of October 2020. This is a third-person horror title. You play as the powerless Jennifer, who is stalked around a remote inn by numerous mind-controlled assailants, and it has your typical third-person control input that you'd expect in a horror game, walk around, interact with stuff. Weirdly enough, she can also control a moth with her mind that will fly around the environment, and you can solve environmental puzzles with that. Watching the gameplay of it, it reminded me a lot of Clock Tower, if you're aware of the incredibly old survival horror-esque point-and-click game from the
Very vaguely, yes.
It had a reboot recently that was funded through Kickstarter, and it went terribly. They spent all their money on assets and didn't really think about anything else, but that's another story. This is technically a sequel/prequel and has a non-linear plot. The first game, Remothered Tormented Fathers, was actually pretty good. It got high praise. And this does not live up to its predecessor. There are a few environmental puzzles. It seems like the boss fights are okay at best. And the combat encounters in the game looked incredibly clunky. Like Silent Hill 1 clunky, worse than that. You know, you get enemies that would just sprint up to you, clip inside you, and then do an attack and you'd be downed. Jennifer is also incredibly slow to maneuver when she's sneaking, and it means maneuvering around is just difficult. The whole thing seemed challenging to play, which is not what you want from any game really, but a survival horror game particularly. There's also a lot of bugs. Button prompts either won't work or won't appear. So trying to hide in a locker, you stand in front of it, there's nothing there. You go to the side, it says press A, you press A, you don't get in it. Enemies can get trapped in the environment, and they can also trap you in the environment. And sometimes key items disappear. They'll only their shadow will render in, so the item won't actually be there, which is a bit of a game breaker for me. This is a pretty quick rundown, because there's not a great deal to the game from the looks of it. It's kind of quite a typical modern survival horror experience. And it just seems underbaked, undercooked, and a sad follow-up to Tormented Fathers, which, again, seemed like a really great game, had a lot of love. So if this is the first you're hearing of Remothered, I think my advice would be pick up the first one, skip the second one, because at the very least, it needs a hefty patch, and I'm not even sure that would fix a lot of the gameplay issues. You know, the gameplay content just really isn't there at this point, which is sad.
It sounds like it's got the worst of both worlds in that it's not just, it'd be like, oh, if it was just a few bad bugs, patch them out. You know, you don't really want to release a game that's got bugs in it, but if you have to, you could patch them out. But the gameplay's there, but it doesn't seem like the game has got a lot of salt to it anyway.
No, like, technically challenged, the gameplay is mediocre at best, and the story, they went for this kind of non-linear approach, like I said, where you kind of skip between the past and the present, but instead of being quite an interesting, complex narrative, it just comes across as garbled, and you can't really make sense of it. So it kind of just fell short, really, as a game, which is, yeah, sad. You never want to see it happen. The preview for today is Watch Dogs Legion, coming us from Ubisoft, releasing the 29th of October 2020, which is tomorrow. This is an open-world cyber terrorism game, and it'll be very familiar to anyone who's ever played a Ubisoft open-world game.
What's that? Towers, you say? Towers to reveal the map.
Climb this, scan this, do this. We know it. It's still happening. We've actually spoken about the open-world dilemma, I think pretty recently, actually, on a previous episode. But yeah, it's a Ubisoft game. We know what to expect. From everything I was seeing from preview footage, it has a really cool look. You know, that they've really realized a future dystopian London. So they've taken all of your landmarks and put, I don't know, drones, spotlight drones flying over the top, put armed militia on every corner or something. It looks cool. They've kept the aesthetic of England, which is generally much older buildings, but then these kind of digital billboard displays and stuff. So visuals on point. I'd expect it from a AAA studio. The main hacking mechanics are exactly the same from previous games. So you pinball around security cameras, jumping into different systems, and you play the same little mini games to make hacking work and stuff. It's cut and paste, but it was pretty fun. There's nothing wrong with keeping a mechanic that worked, right? Not everything has to be completely overhauled for a sequel, so that's not bad. The biggest development from what I saw, and the thing that made this really interesting, is the recruits and the citizens of London, where you can literally recruit anyone. And I think that's where a lot of development effort has gone. So you can go up to anyone and try and start to recruit them into your terrorism group, your cyber terrorist group, or I should say maybe rebel militia. I don't know, maybe a terrorist group is a bit too serious. And they can trigger off a side quest. So you might have, I don't know, you want a paramedic or like a really good driver or something, because they all have their own special set of skills, and they're each good at a certain thing. So you get a mechanic, you'll literally be good at fixing stuff. If you get a delivery driver, he will literally be better at driving things. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And you might have like the example of a paramedic that I don't know, maybe he's got a gambling problem, I think was the example from IGN. And when you go and try and recruit him, he's been kidnapped by his debtors. So you have to go on a little side quest to defeat the debtors, and then he joins you after you've done this little mission. And I think that's really awesome that every character that you see and that you want could lead you down this little rabbit hole of a side quest that adds to the gameplay and the further plot, of, I believe they're trying to overthrow the government or something. I don't know that much about the plot. It's probably going to be pretty by the numbers dystopian.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, evil corporation / government is in power, form a rebel force to overthrow them.
Yeah. There's also a lot of weapons and equipment in the game, so if you're into that kind of stuff, gathering lots of little bits of loot as you play, and you can outfit any member of your ragtag group of anarchists with this equipment. So, recruit Karen, give her an RPG, see what happens.
She'll still want to speak to the manager.
Yeah. This has been designed terribly. It looks exciting. There's no microtransactions in sight yet, but it's Ubisoft, so we'll wait and see on that. For me, I'm not a big fan of Watch Dogs. I think I played the first one. Yeah, I don't know. It was okay, but it's one of those big time sink games, which I don't generally like. There's not actually that much meat. There's just a lot to do, like a lot of fluff. And I get that sense from, like, Assassin's Creed, they all have it. All these kind of games. And I'm just going to wait for Cyberpunk. It's been pushed back 20 days. I'm fine with that. I'm going to wait for it. Give it to me. I think this is good for fans of open world games.
Yeah, I think you're probably right in that Cyberpunk will definitely be the better game of the two, and it's probably an unfortunate release for it, because it's probably just going to be an alright open world game, like a lot of the Ubi games are.
Yeah, good time sync, tight controls, good visuals, but it's just going to be by the numbers. It's going to be another one in their catalogue. Great on someone's resume, but it's not going to set the world on fire. Last game, smaller one, Pumpkin Jack, coming at us from Nicholas Mezzanier, published by Head Up Games. I've definitely pronounced his name wrong. This came out the 23rd of October 2020. This was released for Nintendo Switch and was literally developed by one man. One man did the development and one man did the port, and that was it. And it's shockingly good for a solo dev. It looks a lot like Medieval, so it's like Halloween themed.
Oh, I love Medieval.
That's right up your street then, mate. You've got a Switch, grab it on the e-store.
I might do, yeah.
So yeah, plays like Medieval, Halloween themed action platformer. The combat looks simplistic but satisfying. The platforming is tight, well implemented, and I think the thing that the game really leans into is its visual design. It seems like the dev knew his scope. He wasn't going to be able to give you really high LODs and really high poly models with amazing textures and stuff. You just got you've got a small cartoony experience, and he just went straight in for that aesthetic, and it comes off. It really does come off. It has that, that kind of Tim Burton Nightmare Before Christmas kind of vibe, a la Cartoon Network. I think that's how I would describe it. And it looks fun, sounds fun. And I think this is a great pickup for younger gamers. It's about 6 to 8 hours long, and it's just not very hard. So I think if you're a bit older, it maybe won't scratch that itch for you. But solo dev makes a full game. I think it's a good game, and also a nice little, uplifting story. All you solo devs out there, you can do it.
Yeah, I'm always willing to tip my hat to a solo dev. So fair play to Nicholas Maisonnier. I'm going to put a bit of an accent on it.
Maisonnier? I'm butchering his name just over and over again. But yeah, that's all I've got for you this episode.
Cool. Thanks, man. I'm enlightened as always.
No worries, bud. Now it's time, Sam, for you to guide us through the maze of fake news to the nuggets of genuine story. Take us there. Take us to our destination.
Oh, you're so much better at like the poetic intros than I am. I'm just like, here's Matt with the news, and you're doing all that.
I'm trying. I want to big you up, mate. Got some good news for us.
So my first one in this maze of fake news, like Matt says, is Among Us got hacked with strange political and personal messages. So an account named Eris Loris, the person that's supposedly behind it, and he was flooding the in-game chat with messages to say sub to Eris Loris YouTube channel and to vote for Donald Trump in the upcoming November 2020 election in America. The messages from the screenshot I saw literally just say subscribe to Eris Loris Trump 2020 on like everybody's feed. So when you go into the lobby to say I think it's red, that's what everybody's thing says. The devs, being Inner Sloth, are aware and are working on pushing out an update ASAP to get it out. It probably won't last too long because, according to Eurogamer, who have supposedly spoken to this Eris Loris, have found out that his channel, or their channel, whoever it might be, does DIY hacks and shows people how to hack various games. And the attack is, or attack in quotes, if you want to call it that, is like a deliberate PR stunt. People know that Among Us is being played by loads of people at the moment, so they're trying to just flood their channel with subs, I guess. Trying to hop on that bandwagon and catch some popularity from it. All in all, it's annoying, but at least they're not stealing people's details or, getting people banned by accident. So it's not the worst thing that could happen, but just don't be a dick, right? Just don't do that.
I mean, it could come out as a good thing, right? If he's shown them that they're vulnerable, maybe they should reach out to him and he can, like white hat hacking.
Yeah, you can. There's definitely a thing that people do that, right? Where Apple get professional hackers to try and crack their stuff.
Yeah, so there's much worse things he could have done.
Exactly.
Much worse, yeah.
As far as attacks go, it's not like the PlayStation DDoS thing that happened a few years ago.
Yeah.
My next one is that Xbox streaming sticks via xCloud are soon to be incoming, and there may be a new tier of the subscription service Game Pass coming in as well. So this came from the Xbox big boy, Phil Spencer himself, in an interview with Stratchery. I feel like I'm Sean Connerying that word, but that's how many H's are in it.
Stratchery.
Said that, yeah, that's a tough one to say. That we may see streaming sticks for Xbox mobile gaming service xCloud in the not too distant future. They're going to be like the Amazon Fire Sticks, and you're going to be able to play games on your TV by having an xCloud subscription. I was a little bit confused. I was like, but if you have an Xbox and you have xCloud, why would you want to put it on your TV? Because you could just play your Xbox. But it's if you don't have an Xbox, so you just have this streaming stick, you have an xCloud account, and then you pay, like, say, ever play Warzone? So I get a stick, I put it on that, and then I can play. So that's pretty cool. Spencer then said in the interview, quotes, I think you're going to see lower priced hardware as part of our ecosystem when you think about streaming sticks and other things that somebody might want to just go and plug into their TV and go play via xCloud. He also did mention the new tier of Game Pass, which has been dubbed Platinum, that will get you, quotes, free and guaranteed access to Xbox hardware. What that exactly means, I'm not sure, but if they're bringing out, I don't know, a new headset or there's a new controller, maybe you'll get that first. You get it shipped to you.
That's cool.
I think it makes sense that Xbox are like upgrading because we're obviously moving into a new console generation fairly soon. I'm not going to be on that train just yet. I have nowhere near the money to be putting down for a new console yet. I also don't have the want either. I don't think that the new machine is going to do enough for me to warrant buying it. I didn't want to fanboy because even though I am on Team Xbox, I do think PlayStation slash Sony make better games overall, at least in the past generation. God of War, Last of Us, all that stuff.
Mm.
But I think it's a good thing for gamers. I feel like Xbox are trying to like future-proof the industry as a whole, and I don't know. I feel like they're trying to make. They obviously want people in their house because they'd rather have the money than Sony have the money. But I feel like they're trying to service gamers overall rather than just being like, yeah, just buy our games.
Yeah, it feels like Microsoft and Xbox almost has a product focus, whereas PlayStation has a development focus.
Yeah, I would say so. Like, I think they realized they'd lost last gen pretty early on, so their focus was on like buying up devs and Game Pass. Game Pass is one of the best things to come out in the last like 5 years, I think, for games. Like I'm surprised like the Netflix of games took that long.
Mm.
But yeah, I think they're doing well. People will have their opinions, and people will say that MS sucks and Sony's better. And to a degree, I think they're right. But I don't know. With crossplay becoming so common, I think that divide of the console wars, I don't see that lasting much too long. You could argue that that's gone already, but there we are. My final one is a pretty cool one. Is that Atari, as in Pac-Man,
Mm-hmm.
is going to be making or building gaming hotels. The division, very creatively named Atari Hotels, is a branch within the Atari itself, and it showed off its concept designs for what these buildings are going to look like, and they look pretty damn cool, especially if you're a gamer, obviously. Everyone's saying that it's given off like cyberpunk vibes, and it's kind of clear to see why, because the first image there's a lot of geometric shapes, there's neon colors, that retro futuristic vibe of like that 80s arcade feel, which is cool. I like that aesthetic. Not for everybody, but
That sounds cool.
the hotels are apparently going to be a place where, quotes, gaming and pop culture inspired entertainment and modern accommodation converge. That's like a full. You can feel like the PR in that someone wrote that. I was like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, someone poured themselves a glass of whiskey after that sentence and
Yeah,
was
they're
like,
like, good God, that's the best sentence I've ever
I've had
written.
a good day.
Yeah, that's all they did in the marketing department, and they get paid like what 8 times what we do. The first 2 locations are planned for Las Vegas, Nevada, and Phoenix, Arizona, with future locations set for Austin, Chicago, Denver, San Francisco, San Jose, and Seattle. So all in America, Matt. So if we ever want to take a trip, I know where we're going. We're going to one of those places.
Well, if we want to watch a GDQ, maybe stay on one of those.
Yeah,
That'd be sick.
that should be a thing. That if once all this COVID stuff, or I was gonna say if all this COVID stuff returns to normal, whatever that looks like, they need to have a GDQ on one of those, definitely.
That'd be amazing.
In these hotels, you'll be able to find facilities such as, quotes, state-of-the-art amenities for esports fans and content creators. Guests can enjoy the latest in video games, experience cutting-edge immersive entertainment, purchase exclusive Atari Hotels merchandise, of course, who's got a merch store, and play the night away in retro-style gaming arcades.
I'll take
You're
all of
getting-
that, but I'll skip the last one.
You want it in the arcades, or you mean the merch?
No, the arcades. I think we both had enough of that in our lives.
Yeah, but they could be cooler arcades with actual good games in them. But who knows? But also, this is what piqued my interest. It will feature a speakeasy. Now, I don't really know what that is in 2020. I know what it is in like 1930, when it's like that's where I'd expect to find people called like Muggsy and Rocco.
There's one in Cardiff, mate.
Is there? What even? Is it just a bar you have to like do a secret knock to get into? I don't really know what it is.
Yeah, it's called the Dead Canary, and it's got no signage out the front of it. There's just a bird in a cage in like the back. It looks like it's the back side of a building's entrance. They've got the like special like fire doors.
Yeah.
But you go up and you press a button on the wall, and then someone will come up from the inside, and you go underground, and it's like laid out like a 1950s speakeasy. And there's one in Bristol as well.
That's good. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's one in the center, right?
Yeah, the red light.
You go in, you knock, and you say how many are in your party.
There's a payphone inside a doorway that's lit red, and you pick it up and it connects to the front desk, but it just looks like a disused payphone.
That's pretty cool.
It makes you feel pretty sick when you like pick up, and I'm like,
you want to go there with people that you didn't know, and they were like, "Oh, where should we go?" And you just walk in, pick up that phone. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm into a speakeasy.
Yeah, I am now as well. But yeah, it's going to have a speakeasy, and it also will have a fully equipped nightclub, which is going to be obviously available for just the adult guests, as well as themed restaurants and bars. I, for one, love this kind of stuff. I would definitely be making Danielle stay there if we took a trip to a place that had one of those. There's currently no word on prices because that's obviously understandable because the buildings aren't even built yet. They've just said what's going to be in them and released some artwork of what they look like. But I might have to do a pilgrimage for one of these. They just sound cool.
Yeah, I'm so sold on this. I would definitely go there.
If it's not insane, we'll make it a thing, Matt. We'll definitely go.
I'm game.
Yeah, that's all my news for this week.
Thank you, Sam. I am enlightened as always.
You're welcome. Objection! So that's enough of me flapping my gums. We are now going to talk about this episode's question, which is what makes a good boss fight? And Matt is going to give us his insights to this. Matthew, go.
Oh, I think this was a really interesting question because a boss fight is just the hardest thing for a game designer. It's when you're making a game, you want people to enter that flow state. They want to be feeling competent, knowledgeable, and like capable inside your game space so that they can make decisions based on what they learn, and they know what information you're blackboxing and what you're not. And you just want to have them between boredom and frustration always escalating. That's flow state. You want to keep them there. And a boss fight is kind of designed to peak that flow. So you're looking to just bump them up towards frustration so that they have to test themselves. And because of that, you see a lot of the same stuff come up in certain games, in certain game series particularly, as to how you approach that, because it is challenging. So if you get one really good idea and you're like, oh crap, this really works, then use it again. Why not use it again? And the examples I've got here are LOZ, the 3-hit rule that we all know. The boss is going to take 3 hits to its like big glowing eyeball in Legend of Zelda before it goes down, and you're going to have to use the item that you got in the dungeon that you entered. So they're teaching you how to use that item. You're going into a boss fight that will test your use of it, and you'll come out the other side with a heart container. And Resi tends to go for big bosses that have obvious weak points and a lot of health, or bosses that have vulnerable and invulnerable phases. So you evade them for the invulnerable, and then you damage them for the vulnerable phase. And that, again, those tropes come up over and over again just because it's difficult to design. So you might as well stick to something that works. And they're just easy ways to mix things up for the player and test them. And that is what a boss fight should be. I've been kind of dancing around the point a little bit, I guess. But they have to test everything the player has learned up until that point. That's the intention, is you're taking, as a designer, you're taking what you've given them and you're ensuring that they've understood and that they can implement everything to a slightly elevated level than you've been giving them already. So Dark Souls might be an example of a standard mob encounter where the attacks are pretty easy to read, or they're quite slow, or you can get their back easily. And then a boss fight, they tend to have a lot more health. Their attacks are more difficult to predict the first time around, or that less ending lag, more damage to you. They just kind of scale everything up a little bit, so you have to nail the mechanics in order to comfortably beat them, which you almost never do in Dark Souls.
It's like made its name from that, right? That you will get stomped, and that is just what happens.
Yeah, you have to die the first time because you don't know the patterns, and they're testing your knowledge base on that, which kind of takes me through into whether you want to test someone's knowledge or their mechanics, their mechanical aptitude. So it might just be that you have to get better at the game, and maybe Devil May Cry is somewhere to look at that, where some of the bosses are like a 90-degree difficulty curve. At least they were for me. I remember that it would take me, when I was playing DMC 2, I think, or maybe the DMC Devil May Cry that came out, where he was a real emo. Some of the boss fights were like, right, this guy is just fast, and he hits hard, and he doesn't have long openings, so I just have to get good at the mechanics. That's your only choice. And, knowledge-based, Dark Souls is an example of maybe more knowledge-based, or even some of the, going back to Resident Evil again, think of the final boss in Resident Evil 2, the original, you just had to hit the switches in a certain order, and once you've done that once, you can do that again. So, that's more knowledge-based. Or you could go completely off script and try and test a different set of mechanics that the player might not be used to using. So if it is a survival horror game, maybe you want to test their movement capabilities, because usually in survival horror you're testing knowledge and inventory management and map management as well. That's typically where your survival horror comes in, is do I have enough of this resource? Can I spend this doing this? Where do I need to go for this? And you don't really have to have your movement on point in order to command that. And in an action game, maybe it's aiming precision. If you're playing a beat 'em up that has guns as like a secondary thing, maybe this one boss needs to be very precise with a certain kind of gun in a certain level, and that's how you beat him. So you can kind of switch that up. That falls into a bit of a pitfall of boss design, where if you do add something new, or you do lean on a lesser mechanic, you might just piss your player off. If it's not something typical, they're not going to enjoy interfacing with it, or maybe it's just going to be so alien to them, it's going to feel like a large difficulty spike, even when, the numbers behind it maybe aren't. Health sponges.
It's going to be like Marmite, right? People are either going to go, oh, this is really cool because this isn't something I've experienced before, or they're going to be like, this is nothing like what I've done before and I hate it.
Yeah, it's like your vehicle turret sections in some games. Sometimes they're really fun. I feel like they're really in place in a COD game. Like, I do love a chopper gunner sequence, because it's just a blow off steam moment, completely different to a boss fight, but it radically changes the way the game works, but it's still fun. But Resi 5, the scene where you're in the back of a truck getting attacked by mobs on backs of trucks, it felt really off to me. It just doesn't.
It didn't quite fit with the pace of the series, maybe more so with that game, because it was pushing in the action genre direction more. But yeah, I know what you mean. It kind of just felt a bit shoved in there. It's like, oh, we should probably have a different section here.
Yeah, and I could delve into like why that was so bad, but we might get into a bit of a different conversation about game pace. Some of the pitfalls to avoid, besides introducing a completely new mechanic, would also be health sponges, and that can just be frustrating if you're attacking someone over and over again, and maybe they have a very narrow window in which they're vulnerable, but they just have an obscene amount of health. That's frustrating. Or all they have is their health, so maybe they're very easy to read, easy to avoid. They're not difficult, but they have tons of health, so that will either pique your player into frustration or drop them into boredom, and that isn't where you want them to be. And you don't need a boss fight to be this one big dude thing. It doesn't have to be a boss, quote unquote. And a game like, oh god, what's that Jonathan Blow game called, where you do the lines on stuff, you draw lines on everything?
The Witness?
The Witness, yes. I want to say The Wanderer for some reason. That has kind of boss puzzles where you have to know how you can interact with the puzzles in order to complete this one, because you have to kind of synthesize that knowledge together. So in that sense, it's still like a boss encounter. It has the pacing and the flow of a boss encounter. It's more difficult than your encounters you've been having up until that point. But, it isn't like a rising out of the floor, giant health bar, huge mace, whatever. It's different. They're just ways. I think that the best way to think about them is they are just ways to test your player, mix up game pace so that things don't get to be a slog. And that's why you have things like the gunner sequences, because they bring your pace up and they allow your player to let off steam. And then a boss fight typically will bring your pace down a little bit, because you might stonewall for a little while. The player might hit their head against it. Hopefully not, but typically you want a player to die at a boss once, and then retry it.
You need to have them respect it, right?
Yeah, it should be hard enough that on their first try they're surprised, and on their second try they have the mastery. You'd hope because they understand the mechanics that are going into it. But yeah, I went right off on one then, but yeah, that's my feelings on boss fights.
I thought it would be a good one for you because I think of the two of us, you're definitely more the design inclined. Not that I don't like or respect game design, but it's definitely more your bag than mine. I think it piques you a lot more than me.
It has my interest, yeah.
I would very much agree that I think they're the toughest encounter to make in a video game because I think they're, like you so eloquently put, they are almost a microcosm of like a game's difficulty curve in one event. And I, like you, I'm aware of them, but I'm not a connoisseur of the Soulsborne games. I know how much you love that word. So I'm not going to comment on those because I can't. But I am going to tackle and or reference some classic encounters that I think are good examples. More recently, I like the looming threat. So Mr. X I thought was a really cool addition in the RE2 remake. That like constant presence of always having to be aware, and the sound design on him was amazing. I think that's a really interesting way to do, or a different take, I would say, on bosses.
He's a great environmental build up to a boss as well, because you see him so much that when you get to fight him, it's like it's an event. The narrative build up is awesome.
Yeah, you've been tormenting me this whole time, and now I have the power to take you on. So I think that's really cool. And Nemesis, OG Nemesis, not the remake Nemesis, where it was like you can either fight this or run away. I thought having that option, which Ari obviously did in things like you didn't have to fight every boss in the game, but I thought that thing of being able to pick and choose certain encounters, but if you fight him now, you'll get something, or maybe if you choose to run away at a certain thing, you can't do that later on. Yeah, I just like that notion of having a different take on huge dudes with massive health bars. I also really like puzzle bosses. Well, that's what I dub them. Things like Luigi's Mansion and I think Zelda are really good examples of this. Because I see a boss as like a player's ability to recognize patterns and where there's a break in that pattern, and okay, I can attack them here. So you have a specific pattern, you break that pattern, do your damage, and then you rinse and repeat. That for me is like that's a classic boss encounter. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Matt, but that's what I kind of think. Games of the 90s, definitely.
I think it's
at the very least
it's a common design trope for action games, platformers, and I don't know, maybe shooters as well. Some shooters do it too, although you don't typically get bosses in.
Yeah, COD doesn't really have bosses, does it? Because it's just like, well, if this is just a human man, so if I shoot him in the head, he dies like everybody else.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to explain it away.
As Matt has also said, I'm not a fan of bosses that are just tank enemies with huge health bars. I think that's a really lazy way to sort of frame your set pieces, and also kind of a bit of maybe a disservice to your game overall, and kind of a slap in the face to the player. It kind of reeks of, I didn't really know what to do here, so we just kind of made a huge version of this enemy. In things like Streets of Rage, that's what all the end of stage bosses are, because they're made to try and wall you out and make you lose your money. So it's a bit more acceptable, I think, in those kind of games. But I think to just give a character 10 times the health of a regular enemy does not a good boss fight make, in my humble opinion.
It is, like you said, it is lazy, and any player will pick up on it and be frustrated by it.
I also think God of War does a really good job with how it makes its encounters. So in a lot of them, you have like popcorn enemies, if that phrase means anything to you. So you do that, you fill up like your rage, your special meter, all the while dodging the boss who's completely invulnerable, and they're just like swinging a huge hammer or pinging around the map, and you've got to avoid them. And then you fill that meter up, and then you can do your quick time or special thing on a boss. That I don't mind so much because I think it fits the style of game that they're in. Obviously, you wouldn't have something like that in FPS because that's just not how the game is set up. But I think in games like that, with God of War being a specific example, I think it works really well. And it also makes you feel really cool. Like QTEs are like a cheap but effective way of having your character do something awesome. Like, I don't know, fucking flying up into the sky, grabbing the sun and throwing it down on them, which isn't too much of a far-fetched situation in something like God of War.
No, and well, God of War like kind of is the poster boy for QTEs, right?
Yeah, it revels in that like insane level of destruction and kind of gore. So when he tears off, is it Ares? Tears off Ares' head, yeah, and he like screams and he like erupts in a burst of light. That's awesome.
It was God of War 3 when he slams, I think it was Zeus's face. He fights someone at like the gates of Olympus. It might not have been Zeus. Who was it? There's someone that tries to stop you getting into the gates of Olympus, and you just like bash his head in the door over and over again. And you have to like hammer circle to destroy his head. I'm talking about an older God of War, but yeah, sorry, carry on. Caveat.
One series that I love but has always struggled in my view with boss fights is Gears of War. So God of War good, Gears of War bad. Gears Judgment and Gears 3 final bosses had like just normal enemies around. It's like, so you're completely the same. You have no special abilities. You might have decent weapons that you brought into the fight, and there's going to be ammo and stuff around, but you've got this huge. I think Judgment particularly. Actually, no, Gears 3 was the same as well. It's just a circle, and obviously in that game we have to just run from cover to cover. It's a cover-based third-person shooter, and you have infinitely spawning enemies coming in that have, especially on the like the top difficulty, have like insane or just aimbots that if you're out of cover and you take more than 1 second of continuous fire, you're dead. Or they have guns that have like an auto aim lock on you, and if they hit you, you just die immediately.
Wow.
Yeah, and all that time you're also getting hit from the other boss. And on Gears 3, it was if you didn't kill the boss quick enough, it would like trigger an event that would kill everybody. So like you're on an unseen time limit, fighting normal enemies or having to avoid normal enemies and kill this boss as well. And then Gear Judgment wasn't as insane, but it was, again, it's just a big circle, and it was like, okay, just run away from this. And if you might end up in a situation where you can't get out of it because this boss does like a charge at you and just steamrollers you, and if you touch it, you die. Gears 2 had it where it was just you just literally you press the right trigger, held it down, and then the game ended. And then Gears 1 was probably the best one against Ram. Gears 4 was alright. Probably unoffensive is probably the best word. Yeah, those are my examples. But yeah, to sum it up, puzzle boss is good. Popcorn enemy boss is fine. Don't look at Gears of War for how to do a boss. That's what I would say.
No, they
Great
sound
games,
frustrating.
bad bosses.
Yeah.
They just kind of don't fit with the flow. I think that's hard when. That's why Call of Duty doesn't do them. You know.
Yeah, it's when you're doing like not modern military. I guess Gears of War does have a fantastical theme, so you can be inventive with what's coming up. You know,
it's a bit more strategic, yeah. But COD is just okay. You just move forward and shoot everything that moves. Like that is the game. Obviously, it's completely contextual, but if you boil it down to its absolute minimum, that's what it is.
Yeah, and they mix up the pace in different ways. You know, you can't have that kind of boss level encounter. So instead, you have like stealth missions, and you have the back of the truck mission. So it ties the conversation on boss fights does tie heavily into that of game pace, because they are a way to change up that pace and make sure the player doesn't get bored in kind of an overarching sense. Even if your core loop is incredibly good, if you're just doing it over and over again, there's going to get a time that it'll stale. You know, it'll get to the point where you just give up on it.
Yeah, it's kind of the same with like, even as much as it's a fantastic, or they make fantastic series of games, like, you know, there's no bosses, quote unquote, in games like Red Dead Redemption or any of the Grand Theft Autos or any open world game really. Like there's not bosses in Assassin's Creed. There's just specific enemies you have to kill.
Yeah, and my most recent experience with Assassin's Creed is Origin, and it seems like the guys you have to kill tend to have like better equipment, or they'll have like a slightly harder level surrounding them. You know what I mean? Like, so the challenge is kind of ramped up in a different sort of way.
Yeah, it's like they'll be in a really hard to get location, or saying that, Assassin's Creed 1 did that really well, I think, where it was like you'd have to attack the guy at a feast and you could like poison him or yeah. So genre I think affects how you frame those boss encounters. Maybe it's a boss encounter isn't just kill this man or kill this thing. It's the apex of the set pieces. But
It
I
should
think
be
we
a
should call it there
peak.
because
Yeah.
we could talk about this for time immemorial. It
It
seems.
doesn't like it seems like it's evolving into a different conversation. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll put a pin in that there, and we'll ask the question for next episode, which is, what are our favorite pieces of video game music?
This is very much a question for me. I'm well into my VGM.
I've got one in mind already. I might even listen to it after we finish recording.
Do it. So that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening, as always.
Yeah, thank you for choosing to spend your time here with us. And if you like what you heard, you can subscribe to the channel, ring a ding the bell-a-ling, and get notifications when we release new videos, which is probably going to be pretty infrequent for the foreseeable, if that's fair to say, Sam.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I was going to make a point of it as well, is that any avid listeners will know that this is coming out a fair bit later than we've normally done. We've managed to stick to the 2-week schedule for the majority of it, but now I think we're both going back into work, and Matt is back at uni as well. Just other commitments are coming into our lives that, someone's got to give, and unfortunately it is the channel. If we had a raving fan base, we would, I think...
Someone might care.
Yeah, so we'd be like, oh, we're people are asking for it and we're not supplying it. But at the moment, it will be less frequent. But I don't think anyone's going to lose too much sleep over it, and we both enjoy it and we treat it that way.
Yeah.
But enough harping on. If you want to subscribe to the channel, like Matt said, please do. It helps us out, and we want to spread our content as much as possible.
And you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We are still active there with the odd post, and if you want to, I like a good chat about game design. If anyone wants to pop up, we'll have a nice chat about it.
Yeah, get involved, send us stuff, comment on our Fun Fact Friday. That's the main thing we poop out of the Facebook and Instagram that people seem to like. Takes me a while because I'm running out of series to do on, to be honest. But thank you again for listening, and you take care.